I offer all of you my respectful obeisances and pray for your blessings, that I may also one day become Krishna conscious. So, someone the other day asked me, I forget how he phrased the question, but the gist of it was, what is it that helps us to become Krishna conscious that people don't talk about very much? That's what I understood from his question. I guess he was asking for something esoteric about Krishna consciousness. We know there's no secrets about Krishna consciousness. The process is the same for everybody. There's no shortcuts, there's no secrets, there's nothing esoteric that you can only find in Loi Bazaar. It's right there in Prabhupada's books, everything, but we have to read very carefully. As we mentioned the other day also, that Srila Prabhupada's books are not like other books that you can just skim through and get the gist of it in a half a second. You actually have to think about what you read. And because Srila Prabhupada thought very hard about what he wrote. Let's all turn off our cell phones if we have them at all. I'm beginning by example. Cell phone is off. So, where were we? Someone asked me what is a topic that's very important to Krishna consciousness but not very often mentioned, something to that effect. And so I thought of a passage that's often overlooked in Bhagavad Gita, not one of the major sections that we hear people talk about very much. This is chapter 17, text number 1 through 4. What is the topic of chapter 17 of Bhagavad Gita? 3 kinds of faith. What are we talking about when we say the divisions of faith? What does that mean, actually? If you're looking for the answer on the board, it's not there, it's here. So what does that imply? Different modes of material nature. What about them? What does it got to do with faith? It influences our faith. And we don't talk about that very much, but it's very essential. Why is that? Because faith is the beginning of everything. Adau Shraddha Tata Sadhu Sangota Bhajana Kriyaha Ityadi. Rupa Goswami outlines the stages that we can expect to go through if we're actually progressive in Krishna consciousness, and they all begin with faith. Faith is the most crucial thing in Krishna consciousness because it's faith only that determines what? What is it about us that faith determines? Our advancement. A Kanishta Adhikari is determined by his faith or lack of it. A Bhadtima Adhikari has got a different kind of faith, and an Uttama Adhikari has a much deeper faith. So faith is a very important topic in Bhagavad Gita. So I'm going to begin. We're just going to read these few purports, verses and purports from chapter 17, and then we can consider some of their ramifications at length. So please bear with us. Arjuna uvacha yashatra vidam utsrijya yajante shraddhayan vitaha tesham nishtatuka Krishna Satvam aho rajastamaha. Arjuna inquired, O Krishna, what is the situation of those who do not follow the principles of Scripture but worship according to their own imagination? Are they in goodness, in passion, or in ignorance? What was it that prompted this question from Arjuna? What chapter are we in? Huh? Yeah, the previous chapter, they were talking about the divine and demoniac natures, and how did Krishna conclude? Very clearly in that chapter. You have to understand, you have to act in such a way that you can elevate yourself, and that is the action which is impelled by Shastric injunctions. Because somebody who doesn't follow Scripture, he doesn't get perfection, he doesn't get happiness, he doesn't go back to Godhead. So that piqued Arjuna's interest. And so Arjuna's asking this question. So, okay, what are these people, where they stand? Are they sattvic, are they rajasic, or tamasic? Anybody know offhand what does Krishna answer? Don't look at the board. What's the answer to the question? Yeah, they all three happen. That's what he says next. Well, let's read Prabhupada's purport, first of all. In the 4th chapter, 39th verse, it is said that a person faithful to a particular type of worship gradually becomes elevated to the stage of knowledge and attains the highest perfectional stage of peace and prosperity. In the 16th chapter, it's concluded that one who does not follow the principles laid down in the scriptures is called an asura, or demon. And one who follows the scriptural injunctions faithfully is called a deva, or demigod. Now, if one with faith follows some rules which are not mentioned in the scriptural injunctions, what's his position? You meet them when you go to these conventions. What do you call these places? That's this kind of new agey sort of thing, right? They're spiritual but not religious. And, therefore they're not really that spiritual a lot of the time. All kinds of ideas you've encountered. So this is what Arjuna is asking about, because it's not new. Actually, nothing is new in this world. Prabhupada said nothing is new. Everything is old. Everything has always been happening before. Punaha charavita charavananam. We're just, chewing things that we've already chewed ourselves. What to speak of other people have chewed them. There's no new ideas. They're all the same old ideas, and they keep being recycled in new forms and given new names by new bodies, or rather by people in new bodies. Because the same old ideologies are being propagated life after life after life, age after age after age, by the same people who have also reincarnated to do that. So this is Arjuna's question. Who are these people? Where do they stand? Here. Now, if one with faith follows some rules which are not mentioned in the scriptural injunctions, what is his position? This doubt of Arjuna is to be cleared by Krishna. Are those who create some sort of God by selecting a human being and placing their faith in him, worshiping in goodness, passion, or ignorance? That kind of implies Hinduism, doesn't it? Because Hinduism is so confused, especially in 2024, that, if you're an ordinary housewife in Lucknow and you cut up an eggplant to cook for your family, and the seeds of the eggplant are distributed in the shape of the Omkar symbol, then the eggplant becomes a new incarnation. True story. This is what happens when you lose track of the books. Therefore, Prabhupada said, books are the basis. How do we say that in Sanskrit? Or I should ask, how did Vyas say that in Sanskrit? Books are the basis? Shastriyonidvat. You've heard my classes, so you heard me say this before. So, do such persons attain the perfectional stage of life? Is it possible for them to be situated in real knowledge and elevate themselves to the highest perfectional stage? Do those who do not follow the rules and regulations of the scriptures, but who have faith in something and worship gods and demigods and men, attain success in their effort? Arjuna is putting these questions to Krishna, and Krishna replies, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, Trividha bhavati shraddha dehinam sa swabhavaja sattviki rajasi chaiva tamasi cheti tam shrinu. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, according to the modes of nature acquired by the embodied soul, one's faith can be of three kinds: in goodness, in passion, or in ignorance. Now hear about this. And Prabhupada explains here. Those who know the rules and regulations of the scriptures, but out of laziness or indolence give up following these rules and regulations, are governed by the modes of material nature. According to their previous activities in the mode of goodness, passion, or ignorance, they acquire a nature which is of a specific quality, according to their previous activities. What forms are swabhava? Everybody has a swabhav, right, in this world, right? A basic mood. You can say even sthayi bhav, but it's not so sthayi. So what is it that forms that swabhava that we have? Our activities and our karma. It all, just like, I was thinking, Deer Park, water. How many times a day do you see this deer like this, and the words Deer Park register in your mind? What kind of result is placed in the mind, but just by seeing these things? Everything you see, everything you hear, everything you touch, smell, taste, and feel is registering a particular mode of material nature. And those modes of material nature, they create a basic outlook on life, a basic swabhava, as we said, that is going to be predominantly either of sattva guna or of rajoguna or tamoguna, or rarely all three of them. I mean, it's always a mix, but it's rarely an equal mix. So, and those modes of nature in turn impel further actions, and those further actions create karmic reactions, and in this way we go on, life after life after life. Therefore, the scriptural injunctions enjoin you should only do things that are sattvic. This is in the 11th canto. You should cultivate sattva guna as much as possible in all the things that you do, in all the things that you see, all the things that you hear, taste, touch, smell, etc. This will gradually elevate us to a higher level of material swabhava, but this is still in the material world. So anyway, we acquire a nature which is of a specific quality, Prabhupada says. The association of the living entity with different modes of nature has been going on perpetually. Since the living entity is in contact with the material nature, he acquires different types of mentality according to his association with the material modes. Where do we hear this from? Anybody thinking chapter 13 maybe? Or even chapter 14? Any verse you want to quote? Purusha prakritis hi punkte prakritijan gunan. What's the karanam? What's the cause? Karanam guna sangosya sarasat yoni janmasu. And you get better or worse bodies according to the sangha that you've accepted. Sangha. But this nature can be changed if one associates with a bona fide spiritual master and abides by his rules and the scriptures. Gradually one can change his position from ignorance to goodness, or from passion to goodness. The conclusion is that blind faith in a particular mode of nature cannot help a person become elevated to the perfectional stage. One has to consider things carefully, with intelligence, in the association of a bona fide spiritual master. Thus one can change his position to a higher mode of nature. Now Krishna is getting more intense. In the next verse he says, Sattvanurupa sarvasya shraddha bhavati bharata shraddhamayoyam purusho yoyat shraddhasa eva saha. O son of Bharata, according to one's existence under the various modes of nature, one evolves a particular kind of faith. The living entity is said to be of a particular faith according to the modes he has acquired. It's actually even more explicit than that in the Sanskrit. What does it mean? Shraddha mayo yam purusha yo yat shraddhasa evasa. Literally it means this living entity is made of his faith. And whatever your faith is, that's what you are. See how crucial it is? Very strong words here from Krishna. How does Srila Prabhupada explain this? He says, everyone has a particular type of faith regardless of what he is, but his faith is considered good, passionate, or ignorant according to the nature he's acquired. Thus, according to his particular type of faith, one associates with certain persons. Now, the real fact is that every living being, as stated in the 15th chapter, is originally a fragmental part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, one is originally transcendental to all the modes of material nature, but when one forgets his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and comes into contact with the material nature in conditional life, he generates his own position by association with the different varieties of material nature. The resultant artificial faith and existence are only material. Although one may be conducted by some impression or some conception of life. Has this been stated before in chapter 15, which Prabhupada referred to? Anybody know what I'm thinking of? How about Vayur Ganthan Ivasharyat? Anybody know this? What does it mean?
Conception of life carried by the wind.
Just like so many smells are carried by the breeze, so many people there's so many worldviews are wafting through the social environment, isn't it? And we associate with any of those, and then we become affected by them. So, Vayur Ganthan Ivashayat. Where do we leave off here? So, although one may be conducted by some impression or some conception of life, he is nirguna, or transcendental. Nirguna means?
No back qualities, no material.
Yeah, no modes, basically. Transcendental. Just like this building. This is Krishna's residence, because, what is that verse? Naham vasami vaikunte yoginam hridayeshu cha. What is the rest of it? Anybody? Yes. Yes. Wherever my devotees are gathered and chanting, that is my residence, O Narada, he says. And in 11th canto, what else do we hear? About vanam tu sattviko vaso gramo rajasa uchyate tamasam dyuta sadanam manniketam tu nirgunam. This place is also nirguna. We are nirguna. This temple is also nirguna. Everything we're doing now is nirguna. It's beyond the modes of material nature. I should translate that. To live in the forest, that is sattvic. To live in a city, that is rajasic. To live in a sinful place, that is tamasic. But to live in my temple or my residence, Vrindavan, Mayapur, etc., Krishna says that is nirguna. Okay, so therefore one has to become cleansed of his material contamination that he has acquired. This is our swabhava, our mundane nature, in order to regain his relationship with the Supreme Lord. That is the only path without fear, Krishna consciousness. If one is situated in Krishna consciousness, then that path is guaranteed for his elevation to the perfectional stage. If one does not take to this path of self-realization, then he is surely to be conducted by the influence of the modes of nature. The word shraddha, or faith, is very significant in this verse. Shraddha, or faith, originally comes out of the mode of goodness. It's described again, and I think it's in the 11th canto, sattvat sanjayate shraddha. Shraddha comes from sattva guna. That's why we cultivate sattva guna. You cannot cultivate faith very well in tamoguna or in rajoguna. But if you're sattvic, then you can, it's like having a fertile field in which to plant the seed of faith. So that's what Prabhupada is saying here. One's faith may be in a demigod or some created god or some mental concoction. One's strong faith is supposed to be productive of works of material goodness. But in material conditional life, no works are completely purified. They're mixed. They're not in pure goodness. Pure goodness is transcendental. In purified goodness, one can understand the real nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As long as one's faith is not completely in purified goodness, the faith is subject to contamination by any of these modes of material nature. The contaminated modes of the material nature expand to the heart. Therefore, according to the position of the heart in contact with a particular mode of material nature, one's faith is established. It should be understood that if one's heart is in the mode of goodness, his faith is also in the mode of goodness. If his heart is in the mode of passion, his faith is also in the mode of passion. And if his heart is in the mode of darkness, illusion, his faith is also thus contaminated. In other words, you can extrapolate backwards as well. If you have tamasic faith, that means your heart is full of tamoguna. Sorry. If you are demonstrating Rajasic faith, then your heart is contaminated by the mode of passion. And if you're demonstrating Sattvic faith, then it's to be understood. You're really a Brahman. Have a pure heart. So, thus we find different types of faith in this world, and there are different types of religions due to different types of faith. The real principle of religious faith is situated in the mode of pure goodness. But because the heart is tainted, we find different types of religious principles. This is why people say that I'm spiritual but not religious. They can perceive that in just this these tainted faiths that exist in this world, there's a lot of nonsense. People frankly perceive that. Anybody can perceive that. You don't even have to be advanced. You just have to be sensitive and intelligent. In fact, you don't even have to be intelligent. I mean, any fool can figure out that, to fly a jetliner full of, fuel into the World Trade Center, that's tamoguna. Cannot possibly be anything else. But it goes as faith. So, thus, according to different types of faith, there are different kinds of worship. Now, it's embedded here in the purport, but Prabhupada has said something very significant. He says that as long as one's faith is not completely in purified goodness, the faith is subject to contamination by any of the modes of material nature. And what have we learned from chapter 14 about these modes of material nature? About this particular point? No. Well, that's also there, but what are these modes? They're always in flux, right? Yeah. They're always moving around. Sometimes sattva is on top, and sometimes rajoguna pushes that out of the way and takes charge. Sometimes tamoguna dominates both of them. It's just always moving around. Nothing is very stable in this world, including your faith. So it doesn't help that you have faith as long as you're in your Jupiter period, because as soon as the modes of material nature change, then who knows what will happen. You see? Now this is where the Acharya's commentaries have help us to understand what Prabhupada is trying to communicate to us. So I'll try to summarize some of those. In general, the principle, the basic idea here is that one should only cultivate sattvic shraddha, according to Jayatirtha, commentator in the Madhvacharya Sampradaya. Sridhar Swami says there are two kinds of faith. He calls them Shastrajanya or Swabhavaja. Only Shastrajanya Shraddha can change Swabhava, that determines one's faith and therefore actions and therefore results. It develops through satsanga. So two terms, you've got to bookmark these two very important terms. Swabhavaja, faith. That means faith born of one's nature. Swabhava. You've got a particular swabhava, and out of that swabhava you've got some faith. That is the tainted faith that Prabhupada is mentioning in his purport. Now the other, and that swabhavaja, you don't have to do anything. It's automatic. Whatever faith you're born with, that's your swabhavaja faith. Nothing, no input required. But you don't want to stay in that platform of swabhavaja faith, because as soon as the influence of the modes change, then your faith is also going to change. And you no longer have that faith. It will be of a perhaps more likely than not more tainted variety. It will go down. Even if we assume for the sake of argument that you're in sattva guna right now, which most of us aren't. But even if we are, you're not going to stay there, my friend. So this is something we have to consider a little bit soberly. So that's one kind of faith. It's called swabhavaja shraddha, or faith born of one's acquired nature. And then Sridhar Swami says the other type is called Shastrajanya faith, which means faith that is born from very careful study of the Shastra in the association of pure devotees while following the instructions and the principles and the guidance that we receive from a bona fide spiritual master in Krishna consciousness. In other words, everything that we do here in Krishna life. That kind of faith, that will actually elevate you beyond this swabhava platform, beyond the modes of material nature, into what Prabhupada is emphasizing in his purport as pure goodness, or purified goodness. It is of the nature of sattva, but it's safe sattva, secure sattva. Sattva that's not going to be taken away or pushed out of the way by one of the other modes. It's only by this very careful application of the process of Krishna consciousness that high level of faith can be, first of all, created and then sustained. Very, very important point. Big difference. Okay, so what are the two types of faith? This is your pop quiz. No, I don't talk all at once. I'm going to call on you. Bhaktanali. It's your day to shine. What are the two? Okay, you didn't get it, right? Okay. Mozart's got it. Swabhavaja faith means faith born of your prescribed nature. And Shastrajanya faith means faith that comes from practicing Krishna consciousness. Very important distinction. Now, on the basis of these two distinctions, we can understand the rest of the commentaries, because otherwise we won't get it. Krishna elaborates here the natural faith that we may have, Swabhavaja faith, because that's first of all, it's most common, but it's what's usual. You don't have to do anything. That's your default. That's your baseline faith. But here he's emphasizing, the acharyas rather are emphasizing Shastrajanya faith. We have to work. We have to apply ourselves to some discipline that will create Shuddha Sattvic faith. And that is the process of Krishna consciousness. Now, in this third verse, Sattva, Sattvanu Rupa Sarvasya Shraddha Bhavati Bharata. What does that mean, Sattvanu Rupa? Anybody who speaks an Indian language should be able to guess this.
The very form of goodness.
Following from goodness, maybe you can say something like that. Sattva Anurupa, reflecting maybe the mode of goodness. So Sattvanurupa Sarvasya Shraddha Bhavati Bharata. So does it mean sattva? This is a trick question. Nobody will get it. I'm going to tell you the answer.
Is it to associate with the mode of goodness? Is it to associate with the mode of goodness?
Nope.
It means to follow the devotees, is it?
Nope. It has nothing to do with any mode, including goodness, believe it or not. Because sattva means something else also. Sattva means existence.
Whoa.
Just like back in chapter 16, is it? He defines the godly qualities. Abhayam, sattva samshuddhi, right? Sattva samshuddhi. How do you purify your existence? This is the point. So this is a trick. It's actually can be misleading if we don't have guidance. You can read that word and you think, okay, yeah, faith, because 11th canto says, right, we already discussed, faith comes from the mode of goodness. Everybody following this? This is high-level stuff. If you're a little confused, you have a right, because it's not easy to understand this. But Krishna tells Uddhava in the 11th canto that faith comes from sattva guna. So that when you read this in the context of discussing three modes of faith, if Krishna says sattvanu rupa sarvasya yoga shraddha bhavati, all faith is coming from sattva, it would seem obvious that it comes from sattva guna, but it's not so. It means according to your existence. This is why the first sign of knowledge is to purify your existence. Sattva samshuddhi. Because whatever your existence is, that is to say, whatever your swabhava is, that's what your faith is going to be. That's explicit in the next half of the verse. What is the next half of the verse?
This one?
No, this one. Shraddhamayo yam purusha. Yo yat shraddhasa evasa. This is why I said, whatever the faith is, that's what you are. Because it follows from your acquired nature. This is a little subtle. It's a little hard to understand this, but it's very important to make this distinction. You see how much we're dependent on the bona fide spiritual master. Who would get this, ever? Not in a million years. I'm sorry, even if you know Sanskrit. That is true. There's no way to tell this, only because of commentators we know. So, here sattva means the chitta, or the antahakarana. What does chitta mean? Your subtle body, really. This is a technical term in the yoga school, Patanjali. It means the combination of your mind, intelligence, false ego. That's called chitta. Another word for it, synonym, is antahakarana, the internal sense organ with which we process life. Subtle body. So here, sattva means the antakarana. According to the state of your subtle body, that's how you develop your faith. So it seems that the subtle body and this swabhava are more or less the same thing. They're kind of like the same thing. That's why he's saying this. So it's sattvic only in a sattvic person, not in everybody else. Right? If you're a sattvic person, then you have sattvic faith. If you're not a sattvic person, you're not going to have sattvic faith. You're going to have rajasic faith or tamasic faith. This is why we emphasize the importance of developing shastra-janya shraddha, faith born of careful application of the principles of Krishna consciousness in good association, and especially faith that is informed or directed by the shastra, shastra yonitvad. How do we say that in Sankirtan language? Shastra yonitvad? Yeah, well, books are the basis, yeah. Okay. So we see the importance of Srila Prabhupada's books, not only for output, but also for input. And Prabhupada so many times scolded us that, you think these books are just for selling. No, sir, these books are also for putting inside of our hearts. The same objections that the karmis that we meet every day have, why they can't take a book or why they're not interested in their book, or if they're familiar with Krishna consciousness, why I can't be a devotee, and all these same. We have to deal with all these excuses in our own hearts. They're still there. They're just hiding, but they're still there until we've actually purified our subtle body. So let's go further into these commentaries here. The Lord said that the faith of embodied beings is of three types arising from their previous impressions or their swabhavas. It's made of sattva, rajas, or tamas. Now, Madhvacharya comments here that this chapter elaborates on Bhagavad Gita chapter 14, text 19. I'm not going to ask anybody to recite that verse, but feel free to do so if you're a pundit. No, he's not a pundit. He's got a phone with him. So tell us the verse, please. And I'm going to read the translation so everybody can hear. When one properly sees that in all activities no other performer is at work than these three modes of material nature, and he knows the Supreme Lord who is transcendental to all these modes, he attains to my spiritual nature. So this is a very important verse, because Krishna has told us already in chapter 14, there's nothing operating in this world except these modes. Everything you see is the product of these modes. Everything. It's scary. So according to Madhvacharya here, he says that this, Krishna brings these things up here in chapter 17 because maybe he just wanted to elaborate on what he already said. It was not explicit enough, perhaps. So Jayatirtha, his sub-commentator, also says that the intent is that sadhakas should cultivate sattvic faith, avoiding other kinds of faith. So, since ignorance of the rules of Scripture is possible in the case of all three classes, whether you're sattvic or rajasic or tamasic, you can be ignorant of the Shastra to one degree or another. So it's only the distinction in our own, in the nature of our shraddha that can determine the distinction of activities that we perform. Is it clear? In other words, everybody can be in these three modes of material nature. But it's only everybody can be ignorant of what the Shastra enjoins also. So it's really, how do you tell a person's position? You can only tell by what they're doing, and that is determined by their faith. In other words, you look at what somebody's doing and you can understand what he believes. This is the point. If someone is saying one thing but doing another thing, then use your discrimination. Sometimes we can't understand what's motivating another person, isn't it? Not sometimes, most of the time. It's impossible for us to judge another person, really. We don't really know. But if that person is doing things that the Shastra specifically prohibits, then you can understand he's not a devotee. Even if he's wearing neck beads, even if he's wearing tilak, even if he's saying Hari Bol. So you have to be very discriminating. And discrimination is the key word of which adhikar? Madhyama adhikar. Right? What is his discrimination? How does it manifest? He sees whom? Madhyama adhikari sees what 4 classes? Friends. He worships the Lord. He befriends the devotees. He is kind to those lower than him, and he avoids the envious. This is discrimination. It's necessary to make advancement. The Uttama Adhikari doesn't discriminate like that. Why? Because he thinks everybody's more advanced than me. He believes that. We were talking the other day, the gopis, for example. They think we're just cowherd women. What do we know about this? And the Kanishta Adhikari, he thinks exactly the opposite, right? I'm the only one who's Krishna conscious around here. What's wrong with all these guys? See? So, anyway, in this way, we can extrapolate what somebody believes by what he's doing, because that indicates what kind of faith he has. And the faith, we know it has to come from the swabhava, so we can understand what is his real position. Okay, so therefore this distinction is shown here. Now, Sridhar Swami is commenting. We just kind of summarized Madhvacharya and his people, how they see this verse here. Sridhar Swami says in reply to Arjun's questions about faith, he says that faith in the worship of the Lord of those who act with knowledge of scriptural injunctions is of one kind alone. That's sattvic. Faith in worshiping God among those who follow Shastra. That's what kind of faith? It's only sattvic, right? But the faith of embodied beings who act only according to popular appeal, I want to say, maybe, popular convention, we can say, who just go with the flow, so to speak, that may be threefold. It can be sattvic, coincidentally it may be sattvic, or it may be rajasic, or it may be tamasic. The reason being, it's swabhavaja. It's coming out of their own natures. Look at it this way. We have, not here so much, but in most ISKCON temples, we have a congregation which is comprised mainly of which class of persons? Grihastas and Indians, and here in Atlanta, especially if you go to Dunwoody, what kind of Indians? Telugu. IT stands for Invasion of the Telugus. So, these people are motivated by they were socialized in Hinduism, and they have a sentiment for Hinduism. They're sattvic, relatively speaking. Compared to other Americans, they're sattvic. But they don't... Yeah, you all are meeting every day the purple hair crowd, right? The ones with wearing bolts through their noses? Yeah. Believe it or not, when I first went to Bangalore, and it's hard to believe, but this was in the middle 1980s, and we came upon a stoplight in Bangalore. That in itself was remarkable, because in India we still don't have stoplights in many places. But who should pull up next to us at the stoplight? 2 girls on a motorcycle. One of them was wearing a T-shirt without a bra, short cut-off jeans, fishnet stockings, stiletto heels, and she had a fuzzy hair, like I don't know what you call this, all the spiky hair everywhere. This is what she was wearing. And her friend, I don't know, I didn't notice and didn't look. But, how do we get on this topic? Yeah. We're talking, anyway. So here, yes, most of the Indians in North America right now, they're, aside from the fact that they came here by the mercy of Visa Balaji in Chilikuru, they're sattvic. But what happens if you're just running on that alone? You come to the feast every week, you put some money in the box, and it's a nice social club, and then you go on with your life. What happens with that kind of faith? What kind of faith is that? It's swabhavaja faith. It's just something that they've inherited. And, they're not investing in their accounts, so to speak. They're not working on elevating that faith. So gradually, because we're enveloped by a heavy, we're under siege by these lesser modes of material nature in today's society, especially in North America. It's just a matter of time before that kind of faith is worn down and gets changed into Rajasic faith or Tamasic faith. It's just a question of time. So they're sitting ducks, so to speak. And it's very sad to see that, because we can see that. Yatanto yoginashchainam pashyanti atmanyavastatam. Yatanto prakatatmano nainam pashyantya chetasaha. Persons who are following the process of Krishna consciousness can see all this clearly. But a person who's not engaged in following these things, like rising early and chanting the holy name and hearing Bhagavatam and associating only with devotees, taking prasadam, worshiping the deity, etc., they can't see what's happening. Even if they try to see, they won't be able to see it. The modes of material nature are that strong. So it's like this. You have a car, you're driving your car, but the gas tank is empty. You can run on fumes, right, for some time. But you've got to put some more gas in that car, otherwise it's going to break down sooner or later. So, we don't want to get ourselves in that position where our faith is like, we're just running on the fumes of whatever we invested in some previous life. Should not be like that. So faith is something that requires work. It's just like relationships. Here, all of you are intelligent enough to remain brahmachari, we hope. And, but people who get married, they figure out pretty soon. After about a year or two, they figure out, hey, there's a lot of work to be done on this. You got to invest in this to maintain it, right? A relationship is not something that's automatic. You got to work on it. That's something you should know if you don't know. If you're in your 20s, you probably don't know this yet. But it takes a lot of work. And we go through life making so many important choices. We choose our career. I applied to half a dozen colleges in the United States, and you got to write a convincing letter for each one of them. And anybody who's been to college, what it's like. And then it's a lot of work. And what our career is, and whether I should get this operation, or how to buy a house, or where I should invest my money. These are important decisions that householders especially have to make in life. But we don't make those decisions without a lot of thought, because there's a lot of consequences. You can hurt yourself if you're just trying to wing it when you go and buy a house. Somebody will rip you off. It's like filling your pockets with cash and heading for Chor Bazaar. Chor Bazaar means thieves' market. We have them in India. It's all bootleg Rolexes and bootleg everything. Everything under the sun, bootlegs you can find. They're just ripping you off. Or fake gold. If you don't know how to buy gold, same thing. People don't think like this. When we buy gold, we do think like that, especially for South Indians. Sorry, South Indians. I always poke fun at the South Indians because they're so absorbed in Tanga Malegai Chennai Silkse. So, but we don't put any thought into, how to cultivate a relationship, and similarly, we don't put any thought into how to cultivate our faith. But what is the human form of life meant for? If you can't cultivate faith that can help you, and faith that can help someone else. So this is why Baladevi Dabhushan and other acharyas, by their divine grace, by their causeless mercy, they're trying to urge upon us the importance of cultivating this Shastra Janya Shraddha, this faith that is based on the process of Krishna consciousness, not just winging it. So, continue here. This natural faith or swabhavic faith, swabhavaja faith, this is just, it comes along with your natural impressions left from your previous lives. Only discriminative knowledge taught by the scriptures is able to change your nature. Shall I read that again? Listen carefully. Only discriminating knowledge taught by the scriptures is able to change your nature. But this they don't have. People who are not opening these books, we discussed this the other day in Atlanta, Bhagavad Gita as it is. We go and visit people, and it's just sitting on the shelf as it is. Still shrink wrapped. Yeah, they haven't opened it even. They just, Bhagavad Gita should be left as it is. This is the conviction. People in that category of Swabhavaja faith, they're, as we said, sitting ducks. They're just waiting for a good communist to come along and convince them that there's no God, or some feminist to come along and say you should hate all people. And I mean, the society is rife with these elements now. So they don't have this kind of faith. Therefore, their faith arises only out of their former nature, not their current nature. Current nature, who knows what kind of seeds you're planting now. So hear about this. This is the point of the verse. Now, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur adds some important things to this discussion. He says, paraphrase in the voice of Krishna, he's saying, "O Arjun, first hear from me about the situation of those who worship without giving up the rules of Scripture. After that, I'll speak to you about the condition of those who do give up the rules of Scripture. Hear about the three types of faith which arise from Swabhava." And Baladev Vidyabhushan elaborates. He says, because he was asked, the Lord begins to speak, that faith by which one worships devas and other beings while giving up rules of Scripture because of whatever reason, laziness or difficulty, should be understood to arise from virtuous and sinful impressions from previous lives, Swabhavaja. You may notice, if you're listening right now, that this is where Srila Prabhupada is getting the majority of the information in his own purport. It's resonating, isn't it? So you see, he's not making anything up here. So Baladev continues, that faith is of three types. What faith? Swabhavaja faith, yeah. Natural faith, we can call it in English. It's three types, sattva, rajas, tamas. We have beginningless, unrelenting births, all of us embodied souls, beginningless contact with the three modes. We don't have intelligence that arises from Scripture taught by the devotees that would allow us to change our natures, because we don't open the books. Too often we don't open the books. I'm not talking to all of you here. I'm talking to whoever this applies to. There are enough of them. So, therefore, three types of faith which arise from previous impressions, they appear. That's why your faith goes a little funny, right? We see, 50 years ago, Srila Prabhupada initiated so many people. And, in the beginning, all of them were pretty much ekse. They're all on one page. And then, gradually, and it shows. Because somebody's reading the books and somebody's not reading the books. It's as simple as that. Somebody is following the regulative principles. Somebody is not following the regulative principles. Simple as that. Somebody is chanting their rounds. Somebody else is not chanting their rounds. Period. This process is perfect. It's been handed to us free. And all you have to do is take it. And you will become Krishna conscious because Srila Prabhupada promised. What did he promise? You follow these principles, you chant 16 rounds, I will take you back to Godhead. It doesn't get any better than this. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Don't squander this opportunity. Don't lose another chance. We have to keep dying again and again. Why do we don't even ask, why do I have to keep dying again and again? Just when I start to get it together, then I have to die again because the body gives out. We don't even question it. All right, so we have these different kinds of faith from different backgrounds, whatever our backgrounds are. So faith born from the Scriptures is different. It brings about performance of actions only according to scriptural directions and not impelled by the three gunas. Now, for Sattvanurupa, for verse 3, Madhvacharya says, well, we've already been here. Sattvanurupa, Chittanurupa. That means Sattva here means your Chitta. Yeah, we've already discussed this. And Sridhar Swami says, real faith is actually sattvic faith only, because you've declared it to be a product of sattva in the 11th canto that we mentioned already. Sattvat sanjayate shraddha. So, what time is it? Okay, I'm supposed to end right now, right? Or is it 2:45? 2:45. Okay, we've got a few minutes. I'll finish up here, and then we can have some questions maybe. And it's also been stated, Sridhar Swami reminds us, in Bhagavatam, 11th canto, chapter 20, text 2. Control of the mind and senses, fortitude, discrimination, devotion to duty, truthfulness, compassion, circumspection, contentment, generosity, dispassion, faith, shame, charity, and the like, taking pleasure in the self. These are the modifications of sattva. So that's the proof. Faith actually, real faith comes from sattva guna, and real faith is actually shuddha sattva. Just like dharma. There's so many different kinds of dharma, right? But what do we call them if they're not based on pure devotional service? What kind of dharma? Kaitava dharma, cheating dharma. So swabhavaja faith, swabhavaja shraddha is the same thing as kaitava dharma. I mean to say it's the substrate it's the foundation of kaitava dharma. If you have bad faith, you're going to have bad actions. Simple as that. All right, so a person who has a preponderance of sattva was previously sattvic. And on account of that inherent tendency, he's endowed again with sattvic faith. Likewise, somebody who was rajasic before, he's likely to be rajasic now also. Same thing with tamoguna. We don't change that quickly usually, unless we do something really egregious, really injurious. Then we can change very quickly. It's possible. But generally, we evolve slowly over time, and we morph from whatever we are today into whatever we're going to be in 2 million years, who knows. So these are some of the important things to consider. Let's just see if Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur adds anything here. I think we've said everything. He says, those with sattvic subtle body, they have sattvic faith. Those with rajasic subtle body have rajasic faith. And those with tamasic subtle bodies have tamasic faith. And those people become similar to whatever they faithfully worship. Deva, asura, or rakshasa. This he says. If you're sattvic, you're going to worship gods. If you're rajasic, you're going to worship asuras or human beings. And if you're tamasic, you're going to worship rakshasas. And then finally, that's in the next verse, which we didn't read yet, but Yajante sattika devan yaksha rakshangsi rajasaha pretan bhutaganans chanye yajante tamasa janaha. Those who with the sattvic nature worship the devas, those with rajasic nature worship the yakshas and rakshasas, and those with tamasic nature worship the pretas and bhuts. It's interesting here. I'm just going to close now. Baladevi Dabhushana, I think he says here that pretas and bhuts, they are fallen Brahmins.
Whoa.
You ever wonder? Generally, bhut means a ghost, but a preta is a certain kind of ghost or subtle being. And he's somebody who had a human form of life, somebody who was even a brahmana, but he did not execute the duties that the Shastra enjoins upon him, and so he became a preta. Something to... Yeah, it's messed up, Mahotsaha says. Okay. All right, so anyway, these are the three types of faith arising from different natures due to previous impressions without following the rules of Scripture. For whatever reason, this has been described. Now, it should be understood that by conquering over your nature, by associating with persons who follow Vedic principles, then we can come under the authority of the Vedas. And we can become elevated to this platform of Shastra Janya faith, which is always of one type only. What node is Shastra Janya faith in? Only sattva. And shuddha sattva, pure goodness. Krishna consciousness, in other words. All right. Any questions or any comments? We have a few moments. Yes.
Hare Krishna, thank you.
Hare Krishna.
In the Science of Self-Realization, there's an address that Prabhupada gives. He describes the Hare Krishna mantra that's, recorded and was transcribed and put there. And at one point in that address, he says that Krishna consciousness is not a superimposition on the mind. So what advice would you give to a devotee? And it's related, I hope I'll be able to make the connection, who feels that, not publicly, but privately, he's kind of feeling, feels like Krishna consciousness is a superimposition on the mind. I mean, that person's feeling like I make a lot of effort, but it's like Prabhupada said on one occasion to Hari Sari, it's like trying to wash the coal or straighten a dog's tail. In other words, publicly, this person knows how to behave. He knows what to say, what to do. Practice makes perfect. He's got the whole thing down. But privately, if he's, when he's off on his own, just no people, the devotees around there or anything like that, the mind gravitates to its default position of just feeling like, well, yeah, I'm inclined to believe that God exists as opposed to doesn't exist. But as far as all these things I'm being told, I don't know. I mean, I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing, but it's not like it's
catching.
Yeah. Is that an indication that that person is just totally fallen and is necessarily doing something wrong, or is it just that it takes a long time for the process to really,
Very good question. Very practical question. I'd like to elicit some audience participation here. Don't mind if I ask for a show of hands. How many people feel like what Bhrigupati Prabhu just described? I mean, the thing is that we all feel like this to one degree or another. But feeling is one thing, acting is a different thing. So, if we're following the process, if we're following the orders of the spiritual master, then we have only to be patient. What is that? Jiveto yo mukti padesa dayabhak. What do you have to do to get your inheritance if you have wealthy parents who've included you in the will?
You stay alive.
You have to stay alive only. This is like a godbrother of mine was joking. What do you have to do to become a senior devotee in ISKCON? You just have to stay in ISKCON. I mean, we don't feel particularly advanced, but somebody somehow or other, this is what fate has forced upon us. So a little patience is all that's required, I think, here. We have to be patient, and we have to be determined, and we have to be enthusiastic, and we have to continue following, and we have to make sure that we keep good association and avoid bad association. And we have to make sure that our activities are in line with the examples that were set by our predecessors. Sato vrittehe. So these are the 6 recommendations that Rupa Goswami gives for such persons. And that's, like I said, that's pretty much all of us.
So one should not become discouraged if the kind of
all.
results that you might have had unrealistic expectations of.
Yes, that's why patience is required, because we're impatient. We live in an age where you push a button, and unless it's like, latest up to the minute, right? I mean, this is what that kind of culture does to a person. It makes them very impatient. People they don't even have patience to read books anymore, isn't it? I was in an auto mechanic's garage doing some repairs several years ago, and I was reading. And the mechanic came out and he just looked at me and said, You're reading. That's the only book anybody reads now is Facebook. So, yeah, I mean, it used to be television, now it's, YouTube, Instagram, ityadi. So, yeah, we have to just be patient, we have to be determined, and all these things that Rupa Goswami said. And then the negative side also, we have to make sure we're not doing certain things, and that's where I would, such a person who is thoroughly discouraged like that, maybe some introspection is required also. But, everybody feels discouraged, and that's why what you read this morning was very enlivening, that excerpt that you read from Srila Prabhupada about this. And another nice reference that I always like to share with others is chapter 3, text 31 of Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita purport, which I'll just quickly read for you because it is getting late. He says, I'm just going to read from his purport. An ordinary man with firm faith in the eternal injunctions of the Lord, even though unable to execute such orders, becomes liberated from the bondage of the law of karma. In the beginning of Krishna consciousness, one may not fully discharge the injunctions of the Lord, but because one is not resentful of this principle and works sincerely, without consideration of defeat and hopelessness, he will surely be promoted to the stage of pure Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Anyone else? Yes, Prabhu. The microphone is there.
Does faith at some point become a fact?
Yes. Does faith at some point become a fact? Well, yes, it does. This is the whole point of the, we should read between the lines of these commentaries that our actions are precipitated by our faith. Faith is the substrate or the foundation of our activities. If we, yo yat shraddhasa eva sa, if we are whatever our faith is, then it's just a matter of time. You remember Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he equated the sattvanurupa here with chittanurupa. Your faith is your subtle body. And, your subtle body is what determines your actions, and your actions are what determine your future, and your future is what is manifest in terms of facts. So faith does determine facts. The short answer to the question is yes. Anything else?
This is a short question. I don't know if I heard you right. You said that feminists hate all people?
Well, men in particular.
Okay.
I should have clarified that. You can say all people, because if you're envious of anyone, you're envious of everyone.
Thanks.
If you're envious of one person, you're envious of Krishna. And if you're envious of Krishna, you're envious of everyone. So, in that sense. Chandanacharya? Okay, no more? I hear. Nally? Okay, so time's up, you're saying?
We're going to have a panel.
Panel, okay, so save your question for the panel this afternoon. Thank you all very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
His Grace Mukunda-Datta Prabhu ki
Jai.